So, welcome one and all to this Advent in Community series. It's so good to see you all here. Thank you for joining us from across the globe. This conversation with Joy and Lisa is part of a wider series of conversations during Advent about what it means to be intentional communities and intentional Christian communities at this time of Advent. If you've joined us just for this conversation, you're very welcome. If you'd like to join us for the other three in the series, please follow the links at www.iona.org.uk. But for now, it is my great pleasure to welcome
Mhm.
Joy Connor and Lisa Riley, friends from these lands we now call Australia, co-leaders of the Wellspring Community, and companions on a pilgrimage just over 2 years ago now, isn't it? That Nick and I joined you
Yes.
and other members of Wellspring to journey from Burloo in Perth on the west coast across to Mianjin and Cuchimudlo Island on the east coast for a was it a 5 week long creation care pilgrimage. We met, I think, over
Yeah.
30 Aboriginal Indigenous Christian leaders as we travelled. It is wonderful to
Yes.
have you here. I'd like to invite you, as we begin this conversation, to introduce yourselves. Tell us a bit about who you are, where you are, and your own connection with Wellspring, including what brought you to be in the leadership role. And in the process, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about the origin story of the Wellspring community. So over to you. Which one of you would like to start?
I think Lisa's up first.
I'm happy to jump in. Yes, so my name is, you said Ruth, is Lisa, and I'm a mum of two boys. I was born in 1971. They're actually men now. I've got to stop saying boys. So my sons are 22 and 26 years old. I do things like volunteering at a community garden called Carry On Eco Garden. I've been doing that for 20 years. I'm an environmental educator. I'm an activist for zero waste and a safe climate. And actually made some notes and said a quirky fact about me is that I have and I love the composting toilet that I have in my house. And not everyone who visits my house loves it as much as I do, but that's okay. There's another plumbed toilet if they're very fussy. And I live with my partner and my youngest son in the central coast of New South Wales. It's halfway between Sydney and Newcastle for people who know New South Wales. And this is Guringai, Darkinjung, Gadigal land where I am. And I guess because of some of the complexities of acknowledging country where I am, I also just say that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land and it's not been ceded. But I'm very excited that Victoria, the state south of us, has just had through legislation a treaty with First Nations people, and it's the first one that we've had here after a very sad referendum during the pilgrimage 2 years ago.
Can I just
And
ask you, Lisa, just to explain what you mean the land has not been ceded for those people who don't understand that bit of the language? And it was nice to
yeah,
see John just walking past your screen there,
yes.
Joy. Yeah. Um, Lisa, what does it mean that the land has not now been ceded, not yet been ceded?
Yeah, well, it's often something that we say in acknowledgement of country to acknowledge that our land is stolen land, that we are all living on stolen land. There was never a treaty signed with any of the groups around the country, and colonization sort of happened, you know, from Botany Bay and from in Sydney and spread out over several decades across these lands now called Australia, and they were home to many nations, hundreds of nations, and hundreds of languages too. So certainly that makes a lot of things complex, but it was no excuse for not having a just and proper settlement with the First Peoples here. So we
Thank
are
you. Yeah.
very delayed in
Mm,
helping bring that to a more just arrangement.
mm,
And there is yes, still resistance and apathy over here
mm.
about doing that. But I am going to make sure that I am present in Melbourne on the 12th of December for that the public event celebrating the treaty with First Nations people and the government of Victoria.
Well, think of you then. Thank you so much.
And we're the only colony of
In the Commonwealth.
that has not got any treaty whatsoever with its native people.
Okay.
The only one.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of others that do. Not that they're always abided by or followed, but they, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to go to Joy now for introduction, or do you want to continue, Lisa? Because I sidetracked you with this.
No, that's okay. No, we'll go to Joy and introduce herself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the early days of the community here.
Brilliant, thank you. Over to you, Joy.
Okay, I'm a mother and a grandmother of. I've got 4 children, 7 grandchildren. Like Lisa, I've been a lifelong activist. I think, yeah, I grew up in the Baptist church where you're very earnest about a lot of things, which is, although sometimes the theology can be a little constricting, the earnestness, I think, stays with you, the importance of doing God's will in the world. I don't think it ever goes away. John and I, when we first married, spent 2 years as volunteers in Papua New Guinea, where we met quite a few volunteers actually from Britain who were terrified of the spiders and convinced they were going to die. But it was a great experience in the jungle and in the swamps, and just watching the racism that we had I don't think we'd realised how racist Australia was until we saw them out and about in other countries. There, John went into the ministry, and we were in the inner city in Sydney when it wasn't flash like it is now. Now it's very flash to live in the inner city, but when we were there were beautiful homes with 5 refugees families living next door to us. It was before it was gentrified, and I really got to know what it was like to be really poor. And I worked in the school once my kids were big enough well, they were all in the school anyway. It was just such an experience for me to realise how poverty-stricken so many people were, and all of the impacts of that on the children and everybody. So I think that, yes, I started a residence group, and we managed to get more public housing and more parks and a whole lot of other things. But I think that started me off on a lifelong journey as activist, which I won't tell you because my life's a lot longer.
No, but I can
yours.
I have a very vivid picture of you both as activists and as women of faith, and I think it's that combination that really drew us together. Really, the combination of the contemplative way and the activist way. Can you tell us, Lisa? Were you going to tell us a little bit about the origin story of Wellspring?
Yeah, and that kind of takes me back to a little bit of my earlier days as well. So Wellspring Community began in 1992 when Reverend John Martin was inspired by the time he spent in the Iona Community. And he returned to Australia and gathered a group around him who also felt that we needed a community like that here. And at the time, Australians were not able to become members of Iona. So the natural thing was, let's start our own community. And so I wasn't there involved in that 1992, but probably just missed it in terms of some of the wider church things I was just getting involved in. So I joined just about 3 years later, 1995, and I sort of discovered the wider church around 1991. So it was, went to my first synod meeting probably around the time when John was starting that in the Uniting Church at a meeting, which is where he gathered people to start with, but it was ecumenical from the beginning. And in 1995, when I joined, I was newly married and active in Uniting Church, large youth gatherings. We had big 2,000 young people gatherings every 2 years around the country. And I did Earth Team activities there, organising all the waste management for some of those events, or a bit down the track, actually. By the time I had kids, I was doing that. So I was very involved in Uniting Church for about 10 years. Including We had a covenanting agreement with First Nations people in 1994. I was on a gender commission and the Commission on Women and Men around sexuality issues. And Andrew and I had been dreaming of starting a simple living centre. I'm an environmental educator. He was an outdoor educator with, and it was that proposal actually that we sent to leaders and friends in the Uniting Church. And one of those people was the Reverend Isabel Bishop, who was a member, and I think actually at the time was probably the second leader after John. And she invited me to a Wellspring meeting. And that was,
that was the
when I
hook.
first, that was the hook. So, and at that time, the very new community was still dreaming of having a place like Iona in Australia that people would travel to. And the first time I met Wellspring people was at the location they were hoping would be, a place to gather and build a community, and that was the Ebenezer Church, which is a uniting church. It's the oldest one in Australia, oldest building in Australia of a church building, and it was built in 1809. And there was hope that the congregation would be open to starting a community there, but unfortunately they were not at the time. So other ideas were explored or thought about. So places like Campfire in the Heart, where you and Nick came in the pilgrimage, there were some Wellspring people or members there for a long time, and I don't know. Anyway, I know there were some people thinking, well, that could be the place. Yeah, in the end, we've ended up being, as a dispersed community. We connect with each other with our newsletters and our beautiful prayer diary. It's my latest prayer diary for this year. And we've had gatherings. So every 2 years around the country, we've had gatherings up until COVID. And then since COVID, we still have annual events in different places. So we haven't had such a big gathering apart from the Creation Care pilgrimage. And our local cell groups meet in different places. There's a couple that also do it a bit on Zoom because of the size of Australia and the distance between members and friends. So that the prayer diary has, as a mum raising the boys and not always being really inspired by my local church, it's really been food for my soul. It's been my faith community for a long time. And I've merged from Uniting Church about 15 years ago, merged into Quakers. So I'm now a member of the Religious Society of Friends in Australia. And actually had a little family pilgrimage in 2014. We went to the UK and took my boys to Ireland. We went to the Quaker Yearly meeting in Bath. We had a week volunteering I had a week volunteering at the Quaker Tapestries in Kendal. And my boys and Andrew explored the countryside and the castles and the shop where they made little models and painted things. I've forgotten the name of that. And then that was when, for the first time, I went to the Iona Community, and I had a week there with my family on the island. And then I stayed an extra week. I farewelled my family, and they flew back to Australia. And I had a second week there, had a wonderful time. And then I spent another week around Glasgow, visited Zero Waste Scotland, because I was right in the thick of the campaign for refunds on bottles and cans. And that was something Zero Waste Scotland wanted to know about, what to expect with the beverage industry trying to stop it. And I was very happy to share that. So I even took my Bev the Bottle costume and and Wellspring people have been very supportive of that campaign in Australia, and many bottle suits have been worn.
And can I just ask you, Lisa, about because Cora, you've talked about the prayer diary and the cell groups and the regional gatherings, all very familiar to the structure of the Iona community. You have also some areas of concern that around which you gather, and you don't have a rule of life in the same way, but you have some impulses that bind you together. Can you just say a couple of words about that, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, just thinking, because I did make that note further down.
Yeah. Or is that going to come later?
Yeah, just seeing where I mention it, because
Oh,
when I joined the Wellspring Community, they had a byline which I really loved. It was a community of women and men seeking new ways of living the gospel, and we did have a more explicit rule of life,
yeah,
very much based on the same as Iona Community, and it is still there in our membership as more of a
okay,
guiding. People choose to live by the rule or
okay,
be guided by the rule. And Joy might be better to explain because she's sort of shaped the language of that a bit better. Do
sure.
you want to say something there, Joy?
And we're going to
Yeah,
have to, I've only got another half an hour in total, so we just need to be
Yep.
a little bit more
Yep.
succinct. So,
Yep.
Joy, do you want to say anything more about the Wellspring origins and about the rule?
I think, yeah, we do have a rule, and
Yeah,
it have actually, yes, over the time we've actually been in leadership, we've actually um, moved things to make it more relevant to now.
yeah,
For example, we've changed some of the language to inclusive and loving and open followers of Christ, which is
yes,
what we're promising to be. And we aim to tread lightly on the earth. We
yeah,
aim to work for justice. So I won't go right through it all, but yes, it is similar but we have actually been looking from more, it's actually because a lot of our members have had that kind of stuff feeding in. It's really important for us to be part of it, something as a gay person, for example, which says inclusive in its
sure,
language, because otherwise we're not safe. There is so that's the kind of
sure.
thing that's happening around our rule. Yes.
And that's part of the intentionality, presumably, that you have an intentional focus and an intentional way of meeting, an intentional outward gaze onto the world in terms of your action for justice and peace. These are
Mm.
not just happenstance. These are
Yeah.
intentional decisions that you make and commitments that you make as Christians. Um, I wonder if I can move us on to what the other thing that well that which binds us together, which is our commitment
Mm.
to the
Yeah.
gospel of Jesus Christ, to that a commitment to justice, peace, wholeness, reconciliation in our own contexts, um,
Mm.
and to live out this call as a Christian community within that intentional space, so that it's not just where we happen to find ourselves, but we make a decision to move into the
Mm.
space of justice, peace, wholeness, and reconciliation. And I wonder if you
Yeah.
can say a little bit about what you consider to be the importance of intentional Christian communities today in a world where there's so much fragmentation, so much
Mm.
disconnect. Why does the world need communities like Wellspring, like Iona, that are
Mm.
intentional Christian communities today? I guess another way of asking that question is, what is ours to do to be
Mm.
in the world?
Um, Look, when we were thinking about this whole idea of what should we do, what should we be in the world as intentional communities, we we thought way I thought about it was we need to be signals and we need to be waymakers.
Mm.
When I mean waymakers, people who use who they have to make ways to help the world to be a better place. And I think as far as being a signal, we need to be held together by worship, which it celebrates who we are and who God is and what the world is about. Because people are losing any sense of meaning. They think, what's the point? Because everything's all about rational thinking, management. Let's get this done. How are we going to do it? What's the quickest way of doing it? How we measure it? No heart stuff. And I keep seeing that happening in the church. What's our aim? Did we get there? Instead of what's happening to our hearts? What is God saying to our spirit? How are we being nurtured? And I think the worship that holds both of our communities together focuses us as a signal to the world that what really matters is God immanent with us in ourselves, but in the creation, speaking to us through the tiniest little insects to the most amazing waterfalls. There is God there. And that is what's celebrated creatively in art and music in our worship, and something that we are very keen on encouraging within our membership, that
Mm.
we are a signal to the world that we matter to God and we want to be followers of Christ in this world.
Mm.
But the other thing I think that is we're really unique. There's not many, and we're actually think we might be what do you call it? Anyway, in danger of running of not being around
threatened species, a threatened species.
a threatened species of organization, because we are ecumenical. We have all kinds of people, and some who haven't got any church connections at all, but who are focused on following Christ. But we also are open to people from other faiths and to listen to them and to be friends with them. And that's not very often happening.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to be friends with another lot of Christians, but they don't actually work across the board. So there's not many spaces in the world where there are way makers making the way for true peacemaking. Okay, one way that we have been acting as waymakers, as examples of how we can actually make for peace, is because of our connections across ecumenical groups. We're a member of the Ecumenical Council of New South Wales and connected to the World Council of Churches. But not just that, we actually have friends in so many places because we work very hard to listen to people of faith from many different perspectives. And so when Australia was trying to make up their mind whether or not they do anything about Gaza, and they really were not saying anything. It was just, I've never seen so much prevarication. We worked with the Jewish Women for Peace, who were very concerned that something be said about the violence that was happening and that something needed to happen now. And so we took out with them, we worked with a whole lot of Palestinian groups, a whole lot of Muslim groups, and a whole lot of Christian groups, and took out 2 full-page ads in the only papers in the country that were not run by Murdoch. I know that's quite important because they don't like us. They don't like activism in their papers, the Murdochs.
So it's a range of Jewish groups and Muslim groups and Christian groups. Yeah.
6 or 7 groups about the same number of
Yeah.
Muslim groups and the same number of Palestinian groups,
Sure.
and about 5 Christian groups. So, or 6. Anyway, a lot.
So you have this wide range of a wide network across the faiths, which you could coalesce and bring together around justice issues.
Working with the Jewish Women for Peace and
Sure.
our good friends in the Palestinian Christian group, who we have had a lot to do with. So because of the nature of our group, and that's why I'm talking about our communities can be waymakers, because we are open to that, we were able to work with all of those groups to put an ad in, which actually by that weekend, the Australian government stood up and they said, it is not okay. The violence in Gaza has got to stop. What happened to begin with was terrible. What's happening now is terrible.
Sure.
And we want it to stop. And they were prepared to take actions that I don't think they would have without seeing the number of groups who were coming together to demand justice. And I think that's really important that we say to ourselves, we might be little like mosquitoes, but we can actually do a lot of damage to people who are not caring about anything if we keep up. And
have
all
impact.
of those friendships and connections that we have are part of our strength as people who work for justice.
Yeah, and I think you've used those beautiful words, waymarkers and signals, which are a beautiful, gentle but powerful way to say there is a different way to be in the world, which is fueled by this wide and deep connection that you have nurtured over years, you and others in through Wellspring and other similar networks. So I love that description of being a waymarker and being a signal. And I guess that takes us to the questions or the exploration around Advent. So Advent, obviously, where I sit in the Northern Hemisphere, it's dark and it's cold, and we need light at this time. So light is a huge symbol, the waymark and the signal, I guess, of the birth of Christ, the coming of Christ, at this time of year. You're sitting in a different part of the world where I'm imagining that the days are getting hotter still. Um,
Yeah.
but for all of us, Advent is a season of waiting, waiting for the birth of the Prince of Peace, the anticipation, and the excitement for so many. It's also a time of deep sadness and a heightened sense of isolation and loneliness for many too. So
Yeah.
Advent and Christmas can be a tricky time of year. What does the season of Advent offer or mean to you, to your community? What are you waiting for as a community during this season? Does this season of Advent hold particular meaning for you as an intentional Christian community?
Mm.
There's a couple
Well,
of
I
things.
think, yeah, yeah.
You can start with the with your wits if you like,
Well, I
Kate.
just, well, your notes introduce the season well. So yes, it is getting warm for us, and the summer for us, especially in recent memory since the summer of 2019, 2020, does give a lot of people a heightened anxiety, particularly about bushfires. Yeah, even just the hazard reduction burns that go on in the months leading up to summer can certainly cause me some stress when you see things and start thinking, oh, have I packed my evacuation box? Am I ready? So yeah, that season and the increased heat and the things that come with that are all yeah, very much in our minds. And for me, and for quite a few of us around here in our community, we get involved in what's now I guess no, I think there's been more than I've been involved in 4 years of Rising Tide, which is a blockade of the world's largest coal port, which is just an hour north of me in Newcastle, New South Wales. And it's a fantastic, what they now call protestable, real
Protestable.
action, a family-friendly place. Yeah, protestable. So, and thousands of people gather there in Newcastle, near, basically there's a beautiful beach in Newcastle that is right on the edge of the where the coal ships come in and out all the time, loading up with coal to go to the rest of the world to contribute to climate change. And the aim is to shut down the whole export of coal at some point, and to help those the workers. Like Newcastle is a coal city, and we want a good transition for those workers into new jobs. And the other element that we're facing there is that one of the industries that's moving in is weapons manufacturing. So it's like what we'd really rather is it's renewable energy things happening, because we have all the the power stations are actually between where I live in the Central Coast and Newcastle is where there are multiple coal-fired power stations. And the good news is that several of those are being converted into renewable energy hubs with major battery storage. But yeah, in the meantime, we are still mining and selling coal at huge quantities. And yeah, the protestable is there to say no new coal and gas, and trying to stop the coal ships for at least that weekend. So we actually, in 2023, they actually requested the coal ships to stop, and it was they didn't send the coal ships through. So we had a protestable without coal ships. That had a big impact on those businesses. That every coal ship and the timing of everything is money for them. Last year, the coal ships still came, and then there was a lot more tension with police as, yes, activists in the kayaks, and we have hundreds and hundreds of blow-up kayaks, inflatable kayaks, and people there. There's music, there's events, there's stalls, there's training in nonviolent direct action and legal training. It's a beautiful, amazing event, actually, and we will be there as Wellspring Community with the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, or ARC. We'll have a prayer tent there. We'll be making prayer flags, a bit like I've got a few of them here from last year. Some of them went down to Canberra, but I managed to hold on to one last string of them. And there's a tent, the ARC tent will be there for, there's a whole sort of arrangement actually with different groups that have prayer time and meditation time in different, the community tent and the ARC tent at different times, making herbal tea. There's a sacred service on the Sunday morning that we're part of. And I've made some flags with the symbols of the world religions, the major world religions. So they'll be there. And of course, we'll have our climate scarves. Ruth, you remember our
I do indeed.
climate
Yeah.
scarf. So we will have that, yeah, on the beach on the morning.
Just say a bit about the climate scarf, Lisa. What does it symbolize?
So this is actually it came from the UK. So Common Grace in Australia basically adopted this project, which was 100 years of climate data. So it's global average temperatures from 1919 is at this very end through to 2019. And there's 16 different colors that go through, and up to about here, actually, I've added on just recently the last 3 years.
Okay.
So every 6 rows represents a year, and the colors basically represent about 1.5 degrees change over that time in global average temperatures.
It's a very visible sign of the climate data changing over a century.
It's a very visible sign. Yeah. And as
what
you
I'm struck by,
hundreds of people.
Sorry, I was just going to say what I'm really struck by is that the climate protests, this protestival, coincides with Advent.
Yes.
So there's a powerful connection as the Wellspring community between your commitment to climate justice and to really standing up for justice for Earth during the time that we intentionally reflect on the arrival of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, but the necessary anticipation, the necessary time of preparation and waiting for this momentous occasion. So to hear you talk about the protestival and the Ark tent and the other tents where the worship will be happening, in a very deliberate way during Advent is very moving. I can't quite imagine us all getting out into our kayaks in the winter months in the UK, but we certainly do a similar thing, but in different times of year. Yeah, thank you. Joy, do you want to add anything in terms of what is it about Advent and the season of waiting that has a particular meaning for you or for the Wellspring community?
I think the other one is, and I must quickly add one thing that Lisa did leave out. We are particularly famous for our penguins. We have we have penguin suits, and this year I think they've even got a song and a dance. The penguins. The penguins.
Yes, we've got 4 penguin onesies this year.
4 penguins, and we have a roster for because in Australia it's too hot to stay in a penguin suit.
It's very hot wearing a penguin onesie.
So we have a penguin team who are going to do their dance and sing songs about caring for the environment that God loves. Yes, but I think too, for me and for Wellspring, when we're coming into Advent, there's a sense that the world belongs to Christ and God, and that we were so important that Christ came to us as a person. And I think that whole sense, every time I look at people in my family, and it's quite big, we have big get-togethers, I think to myself, you are beloved of God, because that's what Christmas is about. Everyone you meet is beloved of God, and God came to make sure we knew. And I think that whole sense of waiting for that reminder is something that is really important to the whole of the Wellspring community. And part of our worship that we have the first Wednesday of every month, when we gather for Wednesdays at Wellspring, just to celebrate the sacredness of creation, but the sacredness of all people, because Christ came for the whole world. including the whole earth. And that's the other reason why the fact that what's happening at that we do so much work for the Pro Festival is about the fact that God loves his world, her world, and that world has to be cared for by those of us who love and are part of the Christian faith. So, and we do it with our Muslim and our Hindu and our Buddhist friends.
Sure.
At the Rising Tide Festival, and we do it with lots of crazy fun. And the crazy fun is so fun. People are dying to get arrested. If you are
we had
in
over
charge.
300 people arrested last year.
And everyone was so excited.
Yeah, the Sunday morning service is an interfaith service. Interfaith and no faith all are welcome at that gathering, and it's a fantastic event. And one of our longtime members, I have to mention, Doug, has just been so instrumental in all the things. He's a Newcastle Wellspring member, and he is, just the things he keeps up with the interfaith community, the writing letters to the paper there all the time. We've had to fight to get the permission to have the campground and the area permitted. Last year, our Premier of New South Wales tried to stop the protestival by declaring the whole foreshore of Newcastle an exclusion zone.
So no one can go to the beach.
The anti-protest laws here have got much harder.
Yeah, similarly in this part of the world. And so all even more strength and solidarity to you who protest. And you talked about protestivals. We've also got a wonderful thread within our community of artivists or craftivists.
Oh, yes,
People who take their art and their craft.
And craftivists. We've got craftivist groups happening in Newcastle as part of Rising Tide, and I first heard that at the Quaker yearly meeting in Bath, the craftivism.
Yeah, so there are a number of ways in which we can channel and thread our and make visible our signals in the world that are rooted in the Christian faith. We can continue to light up the way ahead that is lit for us by Christ. It's not our way, it's God's way. And I guess what I was really struck by when you were talking, Joy, was this time of Advent is a time to remember that we are all beloved of God, that God came through Christ incarnate in this time for us and for all creation. And I remember Brooke Prentice, who was one of our companions on the pilgrimage, describing country as all mountains and rocks, all oceans and rivers, all fish in the sea, all animals on the earth, all birds in the air, and all people. And she said it much more lyrically than that, but the notion that creation includes all of that, all plants and all growing, living, sentient and living, pulsating parts of this glorious creation. And we are all beloved of God. And Advent is a time for us to have the fun. We don't wear the penguin suits in Advent in the UK, but maybe that's something we could try.
You could do that.
But we do celebrate. We have fun, and we also remember all that is troubling in the world, and that includes something called Blue Christmas, when we give space for people for whom Advent and Christmas is a really tough time. Lisa, penguins for a safe climate and green jobs for humans. Fantastic. Maybe we'll see some photographs of you in your kayaks and in your
penguin sign, and here's my penguin onesie.
Here's your penguin suit. So, folks, as we as we draw this session to a close, might you have a prayer or a word or a message or a blessing to all of us from the Wellspring community? Thank you for that penguin, Lisa. I do love it, and I'll think of you. But we talked about the worship time and the words in worship that are so much part of our commitment in community and give expression to our faith, and are so resonant for so many. Certainly within the Iona community, we have a strong tradition of of short prayers that weave politics and passion and religious conviction together, and songs, and so on. And we have a great tradition of daft songs in protest as well. But let's bring us back to Advent. Do you have a prayer or a blessing for us as we journey towards Christmas together?
Yes. Well, we have a beautiful poet slash cartoonist slash theologian who has only passed away in the last year or so, Michael Leunig, wonderful Australian, wonderful Australian. And he's written several books of prayers, the Common Prayer and the Prayer Tree, and lots of other things. But this is a little one from him. So I'll share that
Well,
with you.
let's pray then. Yeah.
Yeah. Love is born with a dark and troubled face, when hope is dead and in the most unlikely place. Love is born. Love is always born. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Joy. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are, as we walk side by side, as I guess I call us sister communities across the globe. It really does feel like we are companion communities, sister communities. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are. And thank you all who are part of this conversation. Thank you so much. May God's blessing of love and peace and healing and wholeness be on us all, and on you, Lisa and Joy, as you lead the Wellspring community this Advent and for all seasons to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ruth.